Hello everyone, welcome back to Mr. Rankington. Today we're going to be continuing the Frogger franchise by taking a look at the portable games. And just to clarify, I'm only taking a look at portable game system games and not mobile devices, so no smartphone games or anything like that. Now with that out of the way, let's get started. To start things off, we have My Frogger Toy Trials. This one is a bit strange for a Frogger game. I mean, it's not bad, it's just, I don't know, it's kind of strange. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's not at all bad, it's just very different, because it has this kind of hub world type area where you use a person instead of Frogger, but you do get to use Frogger at times, and it has traditional Frogger gameplay whenever you do use Frogger, but it's very different. And this game is very Japanese. I mean, that's not a negative, of course. I'm just saying it's very Japanese compared to the other Frogger games. Now, I'll be honest, the only reason it's at the bottom of the list right now is because I haven't played too much of it. I just remember what I played of it, I couldn't really get into, but that could very well change in the future. But as of right now, I'm just keeping it at the beginning of this list. So as of right now, I don't know for sure if I would recommend this game or not. The next game on the list is Frogger's Journey: The Forgotten Relic. I'll just go ahead and say there are no bad Frogger games on this list, but, you know, they'll be listed in terms of how much I like them. And in terms of this one, I think it's alright. It's just, I didn't exactly like the direction it took. This game is definitely not straightforward, unlike the previous two GBA Frogger games. And while that's not exactly a bad thing, in fact, there are some games that can be too straightforward, this one is a little too, well, you gotta go back and forth a lot. Not exactly a Metroidvania, but, you know. As a kid, of course, I couldn't get into it because of how, you know, going back and forth it was. And also, I didn't read a lot. But as an adult, I can appreciate it a little more. I still don't like it as much, though. Plus, it kind of has that problem that Frogger Ancient Shadow had, where you have one life and multiple hit points. And that's not as good, especially with the way these levels are designed. Actually, this game came out before Frogger Ancient Shadow, so I'm assuming that Frogger Ancient Shadow took from this game for some reason. Anyway, I didn't like that system as much. But despite how I feel about this game, I can see some people enjoying this, so I would kinda recommend this game, just don't pay a high price for it. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I screwed up because there is a game on this list that is bad and actually belongs below My Frogger Toy Trials. And that game is Frogger Returns for DSiWare. Yeah, they decided to port this game to the DS as a DSiWare game, which is digital only. So while there will be a point where you can't purchase and play this game again, I mean, if you already have it, you have it, but if you don't, you won't be able to purchase it sometime in the future. I don't think this is going to be one many people will miss. Anyway, this game is basically the same as the console versions, except with definitely downgraded graphics. Not that this one had the best graphics to begin with, but, you know. The only thing they really added to this version was touchscreen controls, which means you have the option to make Frogger move with the touchscreen, but that seems like it would make the game worse anyway, so I don't know who would actually use that. But also, like the console versions, this one is pretty cheap to get, and I guess you could say it also has the luxury of being a portable version, but it's still kind of the same bad game, so I still wouldn't exactly recommend this one, unless you were a die-hard Frogger fan trying to collect all the games. Sorry about that mistake, folks. This is the real start to the list. So the next one will take place after Frogger's Journey: The Forgotten Relic in terms of, you know. And that next game is Frogger Advance: The Great Quest. And in case you're wondering, yes, this is a portable side-scrolling version of Frogger: The Great Quest on PS2 and PC. But unlike those versions of this game, this one is definitely better. I wouldn't exactly call it great, and it'd be kind of a stretch to even call it good, but it's still a little more well made. Now this version isn't better because it's a side-scroller, it's because it's a little more focused on what it wants to be. It is a bit on the short side, and it has no save feature, probably because it's on the short side, but it's still a pretty good game. Well, kinda good. So if you ever wanted to play Frogger the Great Quest and have an unironically good time, I would give this one a try. The next game on the list is Frogger for Game Boy and Game Boy Color. Now, while most people refer to the PS1 and PC versions of this game as Frogger He's Back, the other versions are basically just the original arcade game, so I'm just calling this one Frogger. Now, I haven't actually played the gray cartridge version of this game, but I have played the black cartridge version, which is compatible with Game Boy Color stuff, and it's basically the same game, just with color, so, you know. Anyway, if you like the original Frogger game, then you're gonna like this one too. I don't know about the art style, that's subjective, but it's pretty much just Frogger. One thing that's kind of disappointing in terms of being like the original Frogger game is that there's no music during gameplay. It's just hopping sounds and stuff like that. I also feel like they could have done more than just have the original Frogger on here. They could have also had different levels and maybe had the placements of where you take the frogs or rescue the baby frogs, however you look at it. And I don't know, I feel like they could have done a little more, but as it is, it's fine. So if you want to play essentially the original Frogger game on your Game Boy, then here you go. I would recommend it. And the next game on the list is Frogger 2 for Game Boy Color. Now, while this version is also very different from the console versions, it's also very different from the previous Frogger game on Game Boy. This one feels more like a precursor to the GBA Frogger games, only with a little more puzzle elements. So the game overall is pretty decent, there's just a couple of things that really bring it down. One thing is that some of the puzzles are a little too hard, and another thing is that there's literally only one music track during gameplay. But other than those little things, this is a pretty decent version of the game. So I would recommend this version. I would recommend the console versions even more, but I would still recommend this version as well. The next game is Frogger 3D. Now, there was a point in time where I once considered this one of my favorite games of all time, and while I do think this is a solid game overall, that's not exactly the case anymore. I think I was just excited at the time because there was a brand new physically released Frogger game that had come out after a long time. Anyway, the game does have its flaws, like how the goal system is set up and how you get to the goals at times. Like some levels are a little too hard. But overall, the game is really fun. It's a really unique take on the Frogger games, and there are actually bosses in this one, even though it seems like there wouldn't be bosses, but there are, and that's pretty cool. And overall, it's just a really good game. And by the way, yes, there were bosses in some previous Frogger games, it's just that the way this one looks, you wouldn't think there would be, but there are. Anyway, so I would definitely recommend this game. Now, if you want to get it, you will have to get the physical version because this was never officially released digitally. So unless you have emulation or you hack your 3DS and you're able to play it digitally, I would recommend getting the physical version because, well, you know, it's the only official one. The next game is Frogger's Adventures Temple of the Frog. While this one shares the same art style as Frogger the Great Quest, this is definitely a different game. This one plays a lot more like the GBC version of Frogger 2, although this one is more about getting to the goal and has less puzzle elements, but you do have to collect some little collectibles to finish the level. It's a really good game. The only real downside is the fact that it's really short, like you can beat it in around an hour, but other than that, it's a pretty good time. So yes, I would recommend this one. If you like longer games, you might not like this one as much, but if you're a Frogger fan and you want a good time, then I would recommend it. And fun fact, this was actually my very first GBA game. There was no real reason for that information, I just wanted to point that out because, hey, it's my video, I can do what I want. Under YouTube's rules, of course. The next game is Frogger's Adventures 2: The Lost Wand. While the previous one copied the art style of Frogger the Great Quest, this one copied the art style of Frogger Beyond. But the gameplay is primarily the same as the first Frogger's Adventures game. But unlike the previous one, this one just has you reaching the goal. I mean, there are some optional collectibles, but those are mainly for just getting extra lives. This one is also a lot longer than the previous Frogger's Adventures. It's not a super long game, but it's definitely longer. This game has its flaws, mostly in the common flaws you find in most Frogger games, but overall, it's a really good game. So, I would definitely recommend this one. And our last game on this list is Frogger Helmet Chaos for DS and PSP. Now, to get this out of the way, It does have some of the same flaws as Frogger Ancient Shadow, but I feel like they're handled a little bit better in these games. There's a lot to this game. I mean, you've got the main story mode, and then you have the multiplayer through mini games, and you have some costumes you can unlock, and there's just a lot to this game. Not to mention, this game also has multiple pathways to get multiple endings. Most of the endings are primarily the same, it's just that it's slightly altered depending on how you play the game and what goal you reach and stuff. Also, the writing is pretty good. It's definitely for kids, but it's actually made me laugh a few times. So yes, this is a really good game, and I would definitely recommend it. In terms of which version, well, if you have the previous GBA Frogger games and you have a DS that has the GBA cartridge slot, then you can unlock some costumes early in this game. But in terms of graphics and overall performance, I would recommend the PSP version. Whatever version you get, you'll have a pretty good experience. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video, ladies and gentlemen. Go ahead and like the video if you like it, and subscribe if you want to see more of these or any other types of videos I make. And thanks for watching.